As the interest of countries in the East, India and China grows in Africa, fledgling democracies begin to make comparisons to previous colonial rule. Leadership is anxious to protect the rights of local citizens and to learn from previous mistakes. The African Union organizes the largest gathering of leadership ever to occur on the continent. This is a watershed moment for the continent, where leaders agree to put differences aside and to tackle the most critical issues relating to sustainable economic growth and development on the continent. Leaders agree on two key issues: the need for foreign trading policies that benefit Africa in the long term, and the need for strong environmental policies that protect Africa's greatest asset, its natural resources. Following this event, African governments begin to focus on attracting skilled diaspora back into the countries in order to ensure effective trade relations as well as environmental policies. Trade agreements allow foreign trade of extractive nature only on certain conditions. This includes a degree of local ownership, infrastructure development, and the employment and skilling of local staff, and limited rights to land on a lease and responsible use basis. In addition, as diaspora becomes economically active, secondary production becomes a focal point for economic growth. Beneficiation. Environmentalists become key drivers in long-term government strategies. Governments become aware of the climate change risks to food production and availability of water, and thus adopt triple bottom line approaches, with key decisions being around the ability of Africa to continue to produce food in abundance in generations to follow. Governments adopt 20-year sustainability plans. Economic growth is gradual but sustained. As new industries begin to appear and those already in existence show year-on-year growth, there is a dramatic increase in employment opportunity on the continent. Certain governments with increased revenue begin to invest in educational institutions that support the skills required in industry as well as infrastructure to assist with the transport of goods to markets. As education levels rise and democracy becomes a reality for many countries, corruption gets brought into the spotlight through the aid of social networks across the continent. The judicial reform process that began with the first meeting of the International Criminal Court in Uganda becomes increasingly pressurized by civil society across countries to aggressively prosecute corrupt individuals, with specific emphasis on those that are deemed to be taken from funds meant for the development of countries. In another watershed moment, amongst growing pressure from African people, corruption status is escalated in the UN to crimes against humanity. With the extended periods of peace on the continent, a new industry explodes: tourism. Foreign travelers flood onto the continent to experience some of the most well-preserved natural wonders left on Earth. Once again, environmentalist input is required and valued, and the emphasis remains on balancing tourism that feeds conservation and sustainability. Local residents are the major beneficiaries of tourism in their areas and develop a respect and understanding around the protection of natural resources. Wildlife is fiercely protected and poachers receive daunting sentences. Africa begins to stabilize, and economic growth coupled by increased employment as well as a wealth of natural resources makes Africa a very attractive investment for foreign industry. Africa's growth strategy has paid off, and Africa prospers as for the first time countries are in control of their own destinies, and young people see hope in their futures as well as their own ability to influence their countries. African nations become places of reverence on the world stage as densely populated countries the world over turn to these countries as attractive lifestyle choices to build their futures.